Hello, all, and welcome to another roundtable session of Nickel and Dimed, which is the official research and publication platform for the Center for New Economic Studies. We are the members of the Gender and Societies cluster, and joining me today are panelists Oshi, Aadya, and Ananya, and the conference will be moderated by myself, Sashank. So today we'll be talking about quite a pressing issue, and that is the huge gender gap that we see in STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Only 28% of women actually pursue higher education in the STEM field from once they graduate from schools and go into colleges. And the difference is more stark when it comes to the highest paying jobs like computer science or engineering and things like that. So, in a way, women are somewhat sidelined and kind of not given the enough opportunities to pursue these fields. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing today as well. We'll be discussing why there is such a huge uh, gap in the STEM fields, what kind of perpetuates it, what are the causes, and probably how we can try to bridge this gap and resolve this issue. So, kind of building on, normally our first question will be to summarize the topic, but let's start off on a different note here. It's somewhat ironic that all data have been like telling us that women are pursuing science in school more than ever before. Like even in the US or in India, the number of girls students who are taking up science in their class 11 and 12 is extremely high. But somehow that number doesn't get converted to higher education or college or majors and things like that. It's somewhat ironic. It's still high there, but it's still low here. What are the possible causes for it? What are the reasons? Why is there such a big disparity? Yes, Oshi.
It might not be like the most obvious reason for why there's such a gap in higher education and secondary education. But we did this. There's this. Okay, I'm still a humanities student, so I don't have first-hand experience with like differences in STEM, gender differences in STEM. But there's this writer called Schweikart who wrote extensively about differences in women writers and male writers. And the main reason why women write less than men is the lack of role models, and also just like seeing themselves less, like reflected less in texts and just like in a discipline generally. And it's kind of it affects them, of course, mentally, but also they cannot imagine themselves in that particular position. So it's one of the reasons why women tend to not go for STEM as a discipline, because they don't see themselves there as like functional, sort of like they'll have something to contribute to that particular discipline.
As you were telling me, like if we ask people like name scientists, then everybody would probably majority of the person they would name would be males. And then if you like name some female scientists, you kind of change the question a little bit. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, not a lot, eh? You won't be able to kind of you won't they probably people won't be able to tell as many as they would be able to tell for the male scientist names. And I think that precisely comes from the role models. So as you said, if I don't see myself being reflected there, I probably would not pursue the same field. And it's important to realize it's actually not just for women, it's for any minorities for that purpose. Say some Hispanic women or say a black man. We're kind of able to see that, you know what, my identity is not being reflected there. That would kind of lead to this discouraging the factor of pursuing that field. And as a result of which, you probably wouldn't probably take that up, and that kind of continues this vicious cycle. And yeah, and that kind of leads me to the second point as well, which is an offshoot of the first question. But now we saw that majority everybody would kind of agree that one of the main reasons that the STEM gap exists is because of gender stereotypes. And now you brought in the kind of the lack of role models as well. But is it like the only reason that we can give it to it? or is these are the causes, but how is it kind of perpetuated, and how is this gap kind of being maintained? In what are the ways that they are being maintained? Like in what environments kind of stuff? Is it like the social structure still at play, or is it like the general hierarchy? Yes, Adya, yeah, go on.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, yeah.
Okay. So what are the material I went across? There are two kinds of things. So firstly, there's institutional mechanisms that are put in place to track women away. So as you said, that they are pursuing education in this area, but it doesn't necessarily translate into jobs. So that is it, because in like universities, there's like grants and scholarship committees. They're all already biased, so they refuse to grant those things to women on based on some stereotype that they're like intellectually deficient. But this is not necessarily a stereotype. It's like there's old 19th century science that seems to back it up. Like I saw an article by a scientist that said that there's a 19th century diagram of a skeleton of a woman that has like a smaller skull and a bigger pelvis. So it says that as the woman's brain expands, her ovaries shrink, which means that if her persuasions towards science are coming in the way of her birth giving and caregiving in like role, then she should abandon those in favor of the care stereotypical societally imposed job that she's supposed to pursue. I think that also comes in the way of women.
Yes, Oshi, yeah, go on.
Yeah, I want to refer to this novel I read called The 10th Muse by Catherine Chung. It's a historical fiction novel, and it is about like struggles of a woman who is trying to pursue and like work in the discipline of mathematics. And they're like even in the academic circles, women struggle a lot because the sort of like writings and discoveries they have made, and I think even with the case of Freud, much of his writings came from previously written texts by women, and he did not credit them in his work. So they've also like suffered these kind of issues in academic circles itself. So they cannot sort of further their education or progress in the particular field. So because of their like non-recognition in both the both the workplace and the academic place, it's sort of like it of course like stops them from growing further.
Yeah, I mean, like both are good points, but what really kind of made me thinking is what Adya's point of that backing it up with some kind of this scientific claim saying that, as women get a lot into more, as they kind of get educated, their brain size would expand, which would kind of reduce their pelvic size, and hence they'll not be able to give birth and have some difficulties in that kind of a lot. That kind of tells you how, in a way, like women are expected to perform the roles that like perform the roles that the society has imposed them, that is like have rather more than imposed, has assigned them in a lot of sense. And then if anything kind of distorts that role that has been assigned, that kind of is seen as this outsider kind of thing. So if education kind of makes women go away from this primary role of just kind of expanding the family and kind of giving birth, then education to women is kind of seen as, what, no, that's not a good idea, because it kind of prevents them from having children. And that's where it comes as well. Like it again ties back to the first question of, even though the students or the girl students who are pursuing science in class 11 and 12 is high, once they kind of reach college and all, most of the assumptions would be that, what, in another few years you would then be getting married, you would have children, would you be able to manage all of your families, your husband, and do all these traditional roles that the society has imposed on them, along with a rigorous scientific kind of a background. You probably wouldn't be able to do that. So why not kind of leave STEM and kind of pursue a social science, which is apparently a lot easier? These are the kind of these stereotypes that keep kind of they are imposed, and they kind of perpetuate the STEM gap again and again. But what we see right now, and this leads me to my third question, is that due to a lot of communication and probably awareness, the explicit gender stereotypes are gone. It's not, I mean, still there. I'm not gonna disagree with that, but they are reduced to a larger extent. Like, probably can't go out and say stupid. You can't go out and say like, women are all stupid, and yeah, I believe in that. That would be like explicit kind of gender stereotypical. But now they are replaced by something implicit assumptions, wherein you kind of say that women cannot work in rigorous STEM related environments because they have children, and as mothers, they are the best caregivers. And so, because the children needs their mothers, it's better for them not to pursue in these very, very rigorous and hardcore in the subjects like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So my question now is like, how do we respond to these implicit assumptions? They kind of seem good. They are kind of telling you that women are the best caregivers. They are accepting that fact. But by accepting that fact, they're again perpetuating and helping this gap to stay where it is and not helping to bridge it. So how do we respond to these implicit assumptions and stereotypes that that kind of that don't really help in bridging this gap? How do we respond to such arguments? Any idea? It's like I keep telling you, but I kind of perpetuate that gap, but through a positive sense, apparently, so you don't really feel a lot hurt. It's kind of like benevolent sexism. I'm still sexist, but it's somewhat benevolent. You don't really see it on the outside. But if you were to kind of dig down, you would actually see that these are still some of the causes that help you to kind of perpetuate this gap further and further away. So, how do we kind of get rid of that aspect here? Is it again to do with awareness? Yes, Aadya, yeah, go on.
So, I mean, I think this is a very, very long process because the stereotype that women are the best caregivers, it's not necessarily backed up with any science. Like, if the child is of both the man and the woman, then both of them should share responsibility to take care of it. It should not be just the woman's domain. But it's so deeply ingrained that it's going to take a lot of time. And in the meanwhile, maybe there could be some sort of in like an affirmative action where we make put in place mechanisms in like universities or in places of research or other STEM related places where women can balance both of these without being judged for it, without being like questioned on their capabilities and whether they'll be able.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I think I got muted.
yeah, you got, now you're audible again, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it was I don't know when I got muted, but yeah, I was just saying that maybe some sort of policies can be put in place where it's easier for women to keep pursuing STEM related jobs, but also not have to fully abandon their those of like assigned roles that they can't seem to escape at all. So in a way, that could be like a middle ground.
Yeah, Oshi, you can go on. Your hand was raised as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so as Aadya said, it's a rigorous, long process of sort of like accepting women back into their like equal roles. And it's sort of like it should start from how like we are brought up, because we are brought up in with these norms, and we are assigned these roles from our birth itself, and we are as girls we are asked to, and made to realize that we should stick to household responsibilities and prioritize them over anything else. So of course the policies are really important, and any kind of substantial difference will only be made through those. But think it should start from the very root causes of how we get into these norms, assigned roles of gender.
Yeah, that kind of ties it very well. And what I liked Nadia's answer when she said in the beginning, she said, "What there's no scientific proof for it." And I think that's how you probably address that implicit assumption and that implicit stereotypes, right? What is the proof? Just ask the proof. So if you're saying that the mothers are the best caregivers and hence they cannot or they wouldn't really be suited to pursue a role in the STEM field, then kind of you need to probably ask them, what is the proof that mothers are the best caregivers and that men can't do it? And then so if you are trying to ask for the evidence aspect, like when once you tackle the root of the problem, and as you said, that is a long drawn process, agreed. But once we kind of ask for the evidence and the scientific proof, like what's it that why is it the reason that you're telling me that mothers are the best caregivers? What is the assumption that you're having it? And is that assumption based on some kind of a scientific evidence? Does it have some kind of a scientific backing? Then kind of that's how you kind of tackle these issues of this of gender biases that are very very implicit in themselves. And your answers, both of your answers, kind of tied it down to my next question as well, wherein how we can kind of close this gap. But I would like to kind of just close it out with another one and probably just ask you guys as well. These are, even as Oshi said, even if you were to start it from the very root cause, like telling that girls are as capable of boys as they are in say math and science, and they can equally do well as anybody else. They also need to be translated once they move out of their house. House is a very, or house or family for that aspect, is a very very small and it's a small and a secure circle. But once you step out of the world, and once you step out of that circle and into the world, you would still have these problems again. You cannot probably just reform the house and the mentality there without taking care of the broader societal assumptions. And I feel in one aspect, that's where probably the work environment really needs to change. Kind of your thoughts on that aspect. Like this is the last discussion aspect of it. But how does the work culture play a kind of very important role apart from the familial background, the work culture and the environment there, on how it kind of can address the issue of STEM and has the potential of closing the gap? But at the same time, if it doesn't do the job of addressing the gap, it can still perpetuate this gap as well. So it can be both as a cause as well as a solution, the work environment. And I would be happy if any of you can kind of elaborate on that aspect a little bit. Yeah, yes, Oshi, yeah.
I read this in a study that the working hours that have been established over time through unions, labor movements, and everything, most of them ran on the assumption that there would be someone for the particular worker at home who's taking care of all the household duties, so they can spend that much time in the workplace. And this assumption doesn't really work that well in today's society, because most of the people go to cities for work, and they don't have their families at home for those household duties. And when we think about women who are working, they have to take care of both, and both household duties and workplace duties. So it's like the primary sort of issue with that women face in workplaces and with work in general is the working hours, and especially when they have to work till late. And the women generally avoid being outside, especially in cities, late at night. Which is kind of like really central to any kind of work experience that men don't have to face. So yeah, that's something I wanted to share.
Yeah. So if you see, like in a broader sense, it's kind of, you need to reduce those discriminations. In a way, if you see the working hours as well is a kind of a discrimination, right? So you need to kind of address those discriminations. And apart from that, very important thing I would say is that you probably need to address the manager worker relationship. I mean, you kind of touched upon that aspect, the workers aspect. But when you kind of try to kind of sculpt the relationship in a better sense, if the sculpt is the better word, but kind of manage that relationship in a better sense of addressing these discriminations and having some more facilities. Say, how many work environments have crashes now? I mean, it probably is increasing, but it's still a very, very low number, right? So you need to have these particular amenities, apart from addressing the how you need to think about it, probably your mindset. you need to also implement some of these amenities and physical realities that kind of help them to overcome these biases and discrimination that are inherent, unfortunately inherent to some of the work environments. And that can only happen when there is a broader societal change. You cannot expect the manager to change his entire organization if nobody else is changing it. Right. And so that's where the entire aspect of the societal change would come. And that can only happen once again through education and awareness. And that is exactly why this is a very long drawn process as well. It cannot happen overnight. It is first needs to happen in the family, but it's just not enough that it happens in the family. It needs to happen outside the family as well. And when can it happen outside the family? Only when there is a broader societal spectrum of change that can happen. Oh, yeah, Adya, go on.
No, I didn't mean to like interrupt you, but I just had a point that it's not just about women that have like children. If we're talking about women in general, work environment also adversely affects them in a way that there's sexual harassment and questioning their competence at all times, which also like reduces their efficiency, which again perpetuates the whole oh women can't work efficiently in STEM. So even that needs to be addressed, like mechanisms, like safeguards and laws or something need to be put down to avoid that in general as well. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Just adding on to your point, I think your point of again competence was very nice, because just to show that they are on par as men, they are like forced to be exceptionally good just to be on the average level of men. And that's where it kind of gets hypocritic. Like, why am I forced to be exceptionally good just to be on that same level as men and be in that organization, which is kind of a male dominated kind of a structure. So once we address those issues, and that, as Adya said, that would probably require some kind of a policy changes, and to address those kind of discriminations along with some kind of facilities and amenities, that should change. Along with that, the mindset should change, because and that mindset can only change when there is education and awareness. So it is a long drawn process, and we can hope that, as the time comes, as education becomes easier and more accessible, it have a kind of this domino effect on all of this, and reduce the huge gap that we see right now in the STEM fields. Yes, that brings us to the end of the conference, guys. Thank you so much. It was really a fruitful conversation. Despite just having three of us, I think we were able to cover a large spectrum of topics and kind of bring in some really good discussions. I think the level on competence, or the role model points that Oshi brought out, they kind of really address the root of the issue, and I'm really glad we were able to have a discussion on that. Yeah, so thank you so much, and have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.